Hey, I'm here with Greg. Greg, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell me a little bit about your business, ZC Institute, how long you've been there, and for what you guys do.
So ZC Institute was founded about a year and a half ago, and we are a fusion startup company. We're actually creating sustainable nuclear fusion. And our product, which is within the next 10 years or so, it will not be tomorrow, unfortunately, but we're getting there. We are looking to build a microfusion reactor about the size of two of your fists put together that produces a terawatt of power that uses only water. So we don't need deuterium or tritium. We don't need helium or anything like that. All we need is water. We're just using the hydrogen from water instead. We've been doing this for about a year and a half. We actually have 5 labs that are working with us right now. We're adding a few more to actually begin kind of working where we want to go. And we're doing it in a way that no one else is doing it in the world. Most other companies are trying either to build something very, very big and spend things very, very fast. They're using a lot of lasers like Lawrence Livermore did. We're doing something different. We're, for lack of a better term, we're cheating with physics. And we're using basically a quantum hack to create a quantum space-time distortion, which allows us to do fusion on very small scales. So we're only burning like micrograms or milligrams of hydrogen instead of everybody else. Everyone else is thinking going big. We're thinking about going small.
Awesome. Awesome. So very technical there. Tell me a little bit about, what's the ultimate vision? Obviously, you have a long-term goal for the company and what you want to provide.
Well, the long-term goal of the company is to provide energy independence for everybody. The goal is that the hope is that if we can produce a fusion reactor this small, that we can basically, we're going to license out the technology and let other people create it, of course. But the goal is that basically you can throw this into your house, you can throw this into your business, and you're off the grid. And all you need is water. I did not say fresh water. So if you are sitting next to the ocean, you can really just throw a tube into the ocean. And this reactor will produce about 1,000 times the power that fossil fuels do. So we don't need oil or gas anymore. And there's no carbon emissions. In fact, the only thing that you're actually going to get out of it, the products are going to be oxygen, helium, free flow of electrons, and energy, which you can use to turn a turbine. So you're not producing anything bad. There's no radiation or anything else that nature that's coming out as well. So, and with 1,000 times the power, I mean, the sky's the limit with what you can do. There's all kinds of things you can do with that we're kind of bottlenecked with right now.
That's awesome. Awesome. So what made you start up this company? What led to that sustainable energy drive in you?
I worked for a nonprofit for 14 years where we worked with forcibly displaced people. And a lot of people don't know this, but most of the refugees that you see now in the world, either who have been internally displaced or they're refugees of climate disasters or climate change. They're leaving because of desertification. They're leaving because of water issues, things like that. And there's a lot of work that can be done there, but working refugees is a Band-Aid solution. This can fix the whole thing. And I realized that I'm a weird person because my background is political science, and now I'm doing weird science. But I know enough to know how much I don't know, which is a good place to be, which, by the way, best advice you can give anybody who's running anything. Just know enough to know how much you don't know and you should be fine. But I realized that no one was kind of approaching it from this angle. And when I started talking to the scientists in question, they were like, oh, we never thought about it like that before. We never thought about going down this road. And so people just started banging on our door. In fact, the people who did fusion last month, Lawrence Livermore, the ones who did ignition, they called us. They reached out to us. They want to work with us. And in fact, the call before this one, I literally just got the phone with Lawrence Livermore about how to do the legal stuff and get everything set up. So they want to work with us on that. And for me, running a nonprofit for 14 years taught me a lot about the leadership style, and then the leadership is needed to run something like this because we're doing something weird. You're not selling widgets. This is going to be society changing if this works out, and this is going to change a lot of things. And that means you've got to build the organization correctly. You have to build it to last a long term, and you have to pull the right people on to do the right things. And you can't push them too hard because a lot of these people have unique skill sets and unique knowledges and expertises that you will not find anywhere else on the planet. Like the people who are doing this research, there's 30 of them. That's it. So if I lose one, there is no replacement. I can't go back into the labor pool to pull somebody else out, right? So for me especially, I realize that this is a way to kind of change society for the better. This is a way to give clean energy to everybody. This is a way to solve climate change. This is a way to solve the fresh water crisis. This is a way to solve a lot of conflicts in the world. So, we think small.
Awesome. So obviously this is going to be direct to consumer at some point, and helping every household is where you ultimately want to be. Tell me a little bit about, so do you think that's going to be the initial customer base, or do you feel like you're going to need people in the interim there?
So we're going to probably do business to business to begin with. And the reason is because we don't know how to build the thing yet. We're working towards the prototype and we don't know enough. We're not going to be able to build the logistics and supply chains required to really build these things, but GE can, right? And these other large corporations that already have this stuff, who are already doing power generation, can build these things. So our goal for the first couple of phases, for the first 10, 15 years, is we're producing and licensing IP. We produce a prototype fusion reactor, we patent that, we sell that, or we license that out to GE and have them produce it. Now, the usual analogy I use is James Watt steam reactor. The first one was a piece of garbage, but it got the job done, right? But 7 generations later, it's much more efficient and much smaller and whatnot. The first one might be the size of a house. So you can't put a house in a house. But as we continue to do the research, we're going to build up our lab so that we can begin doing smaller and smaller and smaller. And then we can do miniaturized ones. Then maybe we can put it in the back of a car or in a house or something like that. And then maybe at that point, we'll have a subsidiary that sells directly to consumers. But the beginning is going to be selling to large business conglomerates. And also the technology that we're using is weird. Which means that it can be used for not just this. It can be used for getting rid of internet lag. We might be able to speed up computers without actually having to change the hardware. There's a lot of things that we'll be able to do with this that we don't know yet, right? So we're going to license that technology out to lots and lots of people. And licensing fees usually aren't that big, right? There's like 3% or 5% or something like that. But when the world energy market's $50 trillion, 3% is fine.
Sure, absolutely. So building this unique team and managing these different personalities, tell me about a mistake that you've made or a lesson that you learned through this process that other business owners could learn from.
So that's an interesting one, because a lot of the lessons I learned, I didn't learn here. I learned at the nonprofit. And the main one that I learned at the nonprofit was, 1, trust your people. 2, don't push them too hard. 3, if you hire someone who has your skill set, why are they there? Hire people who know stuff that you don't know. The whole point of hiring people is that there might be some overlap, but if they're a clone of you, why are they there? There is no point in you having them there, right? And doing something like this, where I don't have the physics background and I don't have the legal background, for me, ironically enough, getting my degree in political science was actually very useful, because a corporation is just a private state when you think about it. So building an institution for me is relatively, I won't say simple, but it's easier for me to kind of slot who needs to go where, right? But when I started the nonprofit, I also didn't realize the power of no. Sometimes when people say, I'll give you money, but here are the attachments, my thinking was, oh, I need the money, so I have to jump through the hoops. The power of no is really important, because sometimes even if you need that slot filled, if I need that chief legal officer, chief people officer, whatever filled, and there's no one there to fill it, no one that will really fit with the team, it's okay to leave it empty. It's okay not to hire somebody. And a lot of people, especially when you're entrepreneurs, there's a gun at the back of your head. There's a clock over your head, right? Like, you've got to keep going. But if you build wrong, it falls apart. So take your time. It's okay to say no to people. It's okay to say no to offers. If someone wants to give you $100,000 for 80% of the company, it's okay to say no. Like, it's okay. It took me a while for that bitter taste to come out of my mouth, though, of like, but I want to make this work. Yes, but you want it on your terms, on the terms that work best for the company. And that is something a lot of first-time entrepreneurs can't wrap their heads around, is the fact that if someone's approaching you, they want something from you, and vice versa. It is a relationship. And even if it's unequal, that still means you can walk away. And if you need to walk away, you should, because if you don't, you are shooting yourself in the foot in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you were gaining all this knowledge through this process and working your way through these issues, was it trial and error that you found the breakthroughs there, or did you have a great coach or mentor that kind of led you in that direction?
Well, wouldn't you say, though, that if you have a good coach or mentor, that you're going to do trial and error anyways, because they're going to help you to go through the trial and error? And actually, my mentor actually was Jody Charlop. If you want to look her up, you can. I don't know if you've interviewed her yet. She's actually in Atlanta as well. She actually is helps me with executive leadership. She's all about empowering women and putting women in top leadership roles. And I love her. She was fantastic. I went to her to talk to her about my resume, and she's like, "We shouldn't be talking about this. Let's fix you." She really kind of sat down and was like, I would come to her with mistakes I made. I did this. What did I do wrong? And usually her response was, well, what do you think you did wrong? It's not, I mean, come on. Like what's, but the point was, she was, for lack of a better term, she was an excellent business therapist. because a good therapist doesn't tell you how to think, right? They just help you guide yourself on the path that you want to go down, which I think was excellent. And I can still call her up to this day, and she still wants to talk to me, find out what's going on. And for me, I think it's a combination of both. I had an excellent mentor who really kind of guided me about where I needed to go and whatnot. She helped me with my emotional intelligence. My emotional intelligence was, the academic term is garbage. Because of that, I couldn't understand why people were doing the things they were doing. She said, you have the skill set, but it's raw. Let's build it. Let's refine it. And now I'm much better at figuring out what people want, what's going on, how to sell myself. Because I used to make that other big mistake of, well, the product sells itself. No, it doesn't. No product sells itself. Nothing does. People don't invest in the product, especially if it doesn't exist yet. They invest in you because they think you can build the product, right? And they think you can build the company to build the product. And it didn't click in my head for a while. So I did have a lot of trial and error, especially the nonprofit of like, why aren't people giving us money right now? Well, because you didn't sell it right. And it took a while to kind of get that. And I'm still making those errors. And in fact, if I'm not making any errors, that means I'm not trying anything new, and that's bad. But the goal is that I don't consider them errors or mistakes if you can dust yourself off and learn from them. Because making an error, even if it costs you money, in fact, we actually have built in the budget, and it's not written down this way, but I call it the failure fund, which is you screwed up. All right, cool. Can we learn from this mistake and either nullify the loss, or at least make sure we don't make that same mistake again when there's several $100 million on the table, right? And I consider that a win, even if it costs us money, because the human capital that you gain from that and the knowledge you gain from that, and also showing the people that you're working with that you're a human being, that you make mistakes and you're willing to face that. You can't buy that kind of loyalty and that kind of experience with money. It has to happen organically. And showing that you're a human being and that you're not superpower or superhero or Superman or whatever shows that they can trust you when they show their vulnerabilities, because they're going to have them too. Would I rather my people screw up and then hide it, or do I want them to come to me and tell me? I want them to come to me and tell me, right? And if they do that and they show me these things because I did it, then everybody wins in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So obviously you have a very big vision for where you want to take this company and the impact you want to make. Tell me a little bit about what you see in the future. Do you see any challenges that you'll have to work through moving forward?
I do. And we'll see if you actually keep this in the interview. The challenges are geopolitical. I'm concerned about India and China actually engaging in corporate espionage. I'm concerned about Russia inviting me to a hotel and putting me in a 15-story room, and then the window disappearing and me disappearing. Because Russia might not steal the stuff. They'll stop us from getting it, right? A lot of people have asked me, isn't the US government going to steal your stuff? I'm like, no, they want to give me money to do this, because this technology, if it works out, actually breaks our energy dependence on everybody else. And that's extraordinary. From a strategic standpoint, that's amazing, which of course means that everyone who's a big player is also chasing this, which means that part of what we have to do is to take into account the geopolitical situation of the fact that India and China will knock on our door and basically try to bribe people to hand over USB flash drives of our data. And part of how we're going to deal with that is that we're going to hand out equity to the labs that we're working with so that they actually have a skin in the game too. But I can't drop the espionage to zero. My COO is a cyber terrorism expert. He actually advised the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is great. But I can't drop it to zero. So my biggest concern is geopolitical. What happens when we do actually do this? What kind of massive societal, cultural, economic, and social changes are going to take place when energy isn't a problem anymore? There are no more brownouts, and we're just using water. Like it's going to change. If this does work out correctly, this will be one of the biggest revolutions since the Industrial Revolution, since the internet. And that's a huge shift. And I consider it our responsibility as a company, and my own personal responsibility if I'm running the thing, to ensure that we don't create chaos when we're trying to help make the world a better place. How do we roll this out effectively? How do we ensure that we do this in a way that's fair and equitable? 1, 2, where we don't screw ourselves over with respect to profit, and 3, where other countries don't feel the need and the necessity to steal our information and what we're doing, right? So how do we kind of slowly evolve and slowly release these changes without completely shaking up the entire world dynamic? That is what I would say is our biggest future challenge in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. So you touched on it a little bit there, but I want to ask, so obviously with a project this lofty, funding is something you always have to consider. Are you guys funding through the grant process with your nonprofit experience? Are there private investors? How have you gone about that process?
Yes, 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 yes. So we're of course using what I call the quiver approach, which is you're trying to hit a target and you suck at shooting. So use a lot of arrows, right? So, one is, of course, we're chasing federal grants. So we're waiting on federal grants right now, and we're working with different labs to get federal grants. We are
Mhm.
chasing state grants as well. So government grants, just overall government grants. We're chasing private investors. We're chasing venture capital companies. We're chasing angel investors and things like that. Unfortunately, because I've worked for nonprofit for a while, I don't have a lot of extra cash. But we are we're fine with giving equity people and having them come on board and invest in us. And the good news is that once we show proof of concept, we can go to big energy and we can go to Shell, we can go to BP, these guys, and say, listen, give us $500 million. And that sounds like a lot of money, and it is. Don't get me wrong. But the thing is that when you look at other fusion startups, over the past decade, about $12 billion has been dumped into them. And there's literally a
Wow.
slide in my pitch deck that basically says, like, here's all the money that's been dumped in. Number of sustainable fusion reactors in, right now.
Yeah.
It sells itself, but we have to show proof of concept first. And the good news is the phase one is only about $30 to $50 million, depending on what the labs are doing.
Mhm.
Once we show proof of concept, we can knock on big oil's door and big energy's door, and they can give us the money or we can crush them, is their call, right? So we will be the prettiest girl at the ball, and they will bring us a corsage because, by God, you're dating us now. Right. Right now, the issue is finding the beginning people who want to go, because a lot of angel investors and VCs go find the federal funding first. The federal funding sometimes is going, well, do you have VC money? So it's the chicken or the egg issue. The good news is that that's why I spend most of my time sitting in this chair. It is challenging to find that because you're not going to get your money back in 18 months. This is not typical VC. This is more biotech or biofarm. You are looking at an 8 to 10 year turnaround before you see money. But when you do see money, you will see a lot, like a lot. Moderna is a good example, right? Like Moderna had nothing. COVID comes along and all of a sudden, boop. But that was years of work and years of just sinking money into R&D, right? And we're going to be the same way. Yes, it's a high risk investment, or actually, personally, I think it's a medium risk investment, but that's me. Of course, I'm slightly biased. But in the long run, the returns will be literally astronomical. Like you can buy a planet if this works out correctly, several if you want, and we can take you there, so that's basically the main challenge in that regard, which is why we're using that quiver approach of we're hitting as much as we possibly can in that regard to see what we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So if you were talking to a young entrepreneur and they were looking to start their first business today, what would your number one piece of advice be to them?
What's your runway? Make sure that you have money in the bank. Make sure that you are not just jumping off a cliff. Make sure that your friends will support you, because it's bizarre. It is very bizarre that you're doing this because you're doing the job, but if you're not getting paid, it doesn't feel like a job. And that's good at first. And then it makes you feel like crap because you kind of go, I'm waking up every day, but I'm not seeing results, but they're down the road, but I can't see them yet, right? You can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. You can't see what's going on. And so your runway needs to be several months, a year, 2 years. Usually it takes a lot of entrepreneurs 3 to 5 years before they can even pay themselves or before they can do what they want to. And if you don't have friends who understand what you're doing, or at least understand your wonkiness or wackiness, you're not going to get the emotional, psychological, mental support. Because I just read a study a little while ago about entrepreneurs. The suicide rate of entrepreneurs is actually relatively high of startup founders.
Absolutely.
Because yes, there's support, but people go, well, you made that choice. Well, why did you make that choice? Not everyone does this for money. They do it because they see a problem and they want to fix it, right? And capitalism gives us, this is one of the best ways to do it and one of the fastest ways to do it, right? Like for me, I'm not doing this for the cash. I'm probably going to get it. I don't care. I don't really care. I do care about giving energy out to the world and making the world a better place and making the world less unequal. That's my thing. Yeah. That's what wakes me up in the morning. But that lovely feeling doesn't pay the rent, right? And I would say, make sure that you have your runway set. Don't dive in with nothing. Like at least have some money in the bank, be ready to go, and have a good set of friends who will support you. Because I promise you, you're going to get sick of ramen and you're going to want a home cooked meal. You're going to want to drink with some friends and bounce ideas off of them. Have people who you can trust who will back you, because when rent's late or when the electric bill's down, whatever, they might be able to spot you $100. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but when that's the thing that's keeping you awake at night, and making you think maybe I should quit and walk away, that $100 might give you the 2 months of runway that you need because your friend believed in you for those 2 extra months. And that's what gets you where you need to go. And buckle up and get therapy because it's gonna hurt and it's gonna suck and it's gonna grind you down. But yeah, it's fun. Yay.
Yeah, having that support system and just the people around you that want to see you succeed really does make that much of a difference. So how can people follow you and follow ZC Institute? What's the best way to stay in touch?
So we do have a website, zcinstitute.com. And of course, you can follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn by all means. If you want to reach out and talk to me, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I do my best to check everything that I can. And pay attention to the media. We've actually got some media coverage going on right now. I've done several podcasts. I'm doing this right now as well. By all means, reach out to us. If you have a lot of money that you want to burn, by all means, we're happy to burn it for you. And we are, I'd like to offer that we're in pre-seed / seed right now. We're looking for like 2.5 million. So, if you're looking for someone to give a bunch of money to who wants to save the world, we're right here and we're happy to take your money. But otherwise, I talk to everybody because just because someone doesn't have money doesn't mean they don't have anything to offer. Right. And the thing is that talking about this, they talk to other people who talk to other people. You create this exponential growth of who knows what we're doing. Right. And that's just as important to me about creating this better society and better tomorrow as getting cash in the bank. Because most of the people I talk to don't have money. I don't care. What they do have is passion. And you can't buy that. So yeah, that's where you can reach us and where you can find us.
Perfect. And I'll link all that so people can easily find it in the description here. My last question for you today is very easy. So what most inspires you as you move forward in this business today?
Star Trek. Look, I mean, it's a utopian future where we put all of our issues aside and we work together for a better tomorrow. Like, it's one of the few science fiction franchises that showed a utopian better tomorrow. It wasn't this dystopian 1984. It wasn't Brave New World. It was, even in the 60s, you see there's a black woman on the bridge, there's a Russian behind the weapons, and there's an Asian driving. Like, even for the 60s, that was such a huge progressive thing. And Star Trek has always been this progressive future where, like, I don't care where you're from. We're all doing this together. We're going to do this together, and we're going to build a better future. And some of the technology that we're working on, in fact, the technology we're working on is derived from Star Trek. In fact, a lot of the literature and the research that we're doing came from someone who sat down and said, well, what if you could do X from Star Trek? And that's 30 years of literature that we're pulling from that we can actually start doing fusion from. And so you see, when you see Star Trek, especially, you see like the flip phone communicators. Now we got cell phones. You see the pads, which now you got your iPad. Like, so much of the technology that my God, it's the 21st century. Hey, Alexa, hey, computer in Star Trek. They specifically said, this is the inspiration that we got this from, right? Yeah. Hyposprays, biobeds, all these things are coming from this thing. So for me, like seeing, that's why our tagline is turning sci-fi into reality one bubble at a time. Like, I saw this when I was a kid. I grew up on Star Trek. Jean-Luc Picard's my hero. And I copied his leadership style. And when it comes to what they're talking about, what's going on, I'd like that better tomorrow. And now I can do something to get it there. Yeah, I'll get up in the morning for that every day. No question.
Awesome. Greg, thank you so much for joining me today and painting that picture of the brighter future that we can look forward to. I wish you all the luck, and thank you again for joining me.
Thank you so much, Nate. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure to be here.